that tech is really something that I love and I'm definitely pursuing aggressively. The very first case where a young 16-year-old girl was supposedly gang raped on the metaverse. So if you remember when Meta released Threads, the Threads app,
Yeah.
at the beginning, it was said that if you delete your Instagram account, if you delete your Threads account, your Instagram account is also going to be deleted. But nobody knew this when they were signing up.
Hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode by TechTalk360, where we unveil one bite at a time. Today we have one of a very special guest who is Thanuki Gunasinghe, who is also who is an attorney at law and also an interest as a technology advocate speaker, and who is interested in technology. So Thanuki, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Rasal. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Was just very interested in doing today's episode and was just staying till it comes. To
Yeah.
start off with, who is Thanuki Gunasinghe? Let's start it from there.
Okay. So Thanuki has been secretly rather, a tech geek for quite some time. Takes me back to when I was very young, and this is one of the things I used to bond with my father over a lot. New tech items, new tech news, because he was also very much involved in tech. But yeah, it's no longer a secret because I'm finally out that tech is really something that I love and I'm definitely pursuing aggressively. Tanuki is, I would say, adventurous, loves to try new things, and also likes to, make quirky choices, um, maybe even be a trendsetter if possible. But she realizes she has a long way to go. So this is just the start.
What an interesting lawyer you are. Very interesting. Tanuki, let's start it up from where like all the youth in Sri Lanka as well as the world, everyone's using this technology. So, what are the crucial aspects of this online safety and data protection that each and every one, including you and me, grabs the attention, and what are the tips or the important stuff that they have to take note to? Let's start it from there.
Okay. So before I start answering that question, I think it's very important for all of us to understand that the problem pertaining to online safety and data protection is not exclusive to children or teenagers or youth. This applies to everybody. Everybody is a potential target for somebody who wants to engage in some sort of online criminal activity, if you think about it. And you are not safe just because you are mature by age. This is something I believe in because um, and that's something that we need to realize, especially because this is a conversation that we are having a lot nowadays. The conversation of online safety and data protection should not be limited to just children and teenagers. Yes, they are more susceptible, we can say, to falling in trouble,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean that adults don't fall into trouble too, because I know some friends who are lawyers who have fallen into trouble by clicking on random links that they get on Instagram, and their accounts have been hacked. So these are not children, right? These are adults. So I would like to I would like everyone to keep that in mind when we're thinking of online safety and data protection. So that being said, I think the principal reason why it's so easy to fall into trouble online is because, unlike maybe a couple of years ago, our lives are significantly online. Everything that we're doing is online. We are very susceptible to falling in trouble because there's a lot of oversharing of personal information on these platforms, most of which are freely available to you. So, I mean, it's not like you're paying anything to Facebook or to Twitter or any of these platforms to use them. I mean, yes, you have some platforms which have paid subscription, but most of them we use free of charge. So,
Yeah.
in a sense, I would think that this privacy and safety are like the payment that we are making to use these websites, in a sense. And this oversharing of everything that we do on a daily basis on social media, where we are, who we are with, where are we most likely to frequent, who we spend time with, really opens up our world to be infiltrated by online actors who may be predators or criminals. It just allows that to happen. So, keeping that in mind, I think the main risks for youth, since you want to base this on youth
Yeah.
itself
Yeah.
and children maybe, one of the main risks that I see that youth are susceptible to is the fact that we are easily able to access age inappropriate content just at a click. It's very easy because if you notice, let's say if you go on to let's say you want to go on a site which sells alcohol, you see the only question they ask you is, I am 18 years or older,
Yeah.
or I am 18 years or younger. This is a very basic question to get past. So you're naturally getting access to age inappropriate content, you could say. The same applies with pornography, and this has made it very, very easy for young people, especially in Sri Lanka, to gain access to this sort of content. And that invariably puts you at risk because nothing, when it comes to things like pornography, is good for you in any way. I don't think it is something that should be endorsed for any age, whether you are single, whether you are married. So this is a problem. This is a risk. The other things are online predators who mainly come through to children, right? Cyberbullying,
Yeah.
profiling, behavioral advertising. We're often at the risk of falling prey to behavioral advertising. I remember a few months ago, Meta was sued by 40 to 42 states, utilizing behavioral information about teenagers and adolescents to help inculcate certain habits in them, certain purchasing habits in them.
Yeah.
And this was brought to light very recently in I
Yeah.
think in California. I think only
Yeah.
the cases were taken up. So this is a significant problem, behavioral advertising. Then we also have manipulative design, designs that come across as very appealing to young people. That makes you want to subscribe to everything and anything out there. We love to subscribe to things, and this is something that has been taken advantage of time and time again. And then there's also apps that are connected to certain smart devices that we use. It could be smartwatches, it could be our earpods, earbuds, anything that you use like your VR devices, anything that you put on your head that can help detect very intrinsic aspects about you. These reveal things about you in ways that you would never imagine, especially things like neurotechnology can
Yeah.
reveal things about you that you can never imagine. So, this is very risky. Then also the latest, I mean, it's not a new thing, but lately it has been popping up a lot, is this question of deep fakes, which is a significant threat, not just to youth, but to anybody. I mean, we recently saw how Taylor Swift, who is a global pop sensation, she was targeted in terms of deep fakes, and they took over 17 hours to take those deep fakes down. This is a person who is extremely influential, but it took 17 hours to deal with a set of deep fakes about her. So it leaves us to question the impact this would have on people like you and me who don't have that much influence.
Yeah.
And also living in a country like Sri Lanka, where we are not equipped with the technology to detect things like deepfakes. How do we find some sort of redress where legal mechanisms are not in place to safeguard us against something like that? How do we find some sort of redress? How do we find a solution? These are risks uh, that are posed to us by the internet, and it's something that I think we need to keep in mind the fact that the internet, while it's something that is very global, the problems that you can face can become extremely localized. It can be very specific to the country, to the region you are in, and the communities that you are part of. And just because I remembered, I'm going to add this concept of the metaverse, because a lot of people spend time on metaverse platforms, whether they know it or not. Like, for example, if
Yeah.
you're playing a highly immersive game, like let's say Call of Duty with all the gadgets on you, I think you're becoming very much a part of the metaverse. There is a high possibility of you being harassed, you being scammed. There's so much that happens on these platforms that we have got to think about. Recently in the UK, they have started investigating the very first case where a young 16-year-old girl was supposedly gang raped on the metaverse. So even though there was no physical element of this, the
We
mental
are.
harm and the psychological harm was magnificent. So these are things that we have to think about, because even Sri Lankan is like, irrespective of age, there are so many of us that play games. We play Call of Duty, we are on platforms like Roblox, and the level at which we interact with these make us extremely susceptible to harms, and these are things that we need to think about in terms of risks.
So I think that laid the perfect foundation where we can start the talk. So when it comes to Sri Lanka, could you like provide a brief overview on the technological legal landscape that we are currently having in Sri Lanka?
Yeah. So we have about 6 to 7 tech laws. If you look at very, very technology specific laws, I'm not saying that there are other laws that don't have tech components. There
Yeah.
are, like, for example, even the certain amendments to the penal code and things like that have taken into account certain technological aspects. I'm not going into those. I'm looking at have very tech specific elements dealt with. Okay, so the first one is the very recent Online Safety Act that was enacted on the 1st of February. So by this act, the government attempted to identify the issue of online harms, which varied across different types of harm, not just to women and children, but also in terms of creating inciting riots, causing upheavals, affecting religious harmony. The very broad interpretations of harms were recognized in the Online Safety Act, and this attempts to establish a powerful online safety commission, defines certain prohibitive statement types, and also looks at dealing with these in terms of imprisonment and penalties. And there are also certain intermediary liabilities, internet intermediary liabilities, that come to the fold under this act, which is very interesting because this brings in the concept of platform liability. This is the very first of its kind of an act for Sri Lanka, but there was a lot of controversy associated with how this act came into being. And as of 12th of February, a cabinet decision was made to amend this act. So I'm not going to comment too much about it because we're yet to see what these amendments are going to do to the act, how it is going to change it, and what sort of a difference we can expect out of them. So let's leave that for another day. But this is just to give you an idea. Okay, we have an Online Safety Act. Countries like the UK also have one. Singapore also has one. So we too have one now. Next, we have, just before that, we had the PDPA, which is the Personal Data Protection Act, which is, in my opinion, a fantastic piece of legislation, which came about after multiple stakeholder consultations, which are held over the course of a long time period. And the resulting legislation was, I think, the very first of, in terms of South Asia. We were pioneering in that sense, and it also introduces very unique features, like facilitating a data protection management program for companies who have to get on board with this program, if we are to say, put it that way, which is a very unique feature, which is not there anywhere else. They have done this in order to provide certain ways where companies can mitigate penalties and things like that if they have taken steps under the data protection management program, which is very unique. There is also a consideration of certain soft law measures where companies are given time to address a certain breach that has taken place before they are given penalties. And very interestingly, there are no imprisonment terms in this. There's no punishments as such. It's administrative fines that we have in Sri Lanka, which is very progressive in my opinion. And in that sense, I would think it helps to incentivize companies to, and also data processors, data controllers to kind of abide by this act better. So the act is is a good one, because it helps to basically promote cross-border data flows and create interoperability of data protection frameworks, which is all great for Sri Lanka, because that will help us in terms of taking our business with other countries for foreign direct investments to come into this country. All that is brought forward through this act, and that this is a very useful and an excellent piece of legislation. So the PDPA is the one that we just came across right before the OSA. And right now, the Data Protection Authority is in the process of putting together certain guidelines, and sooner or later there will be some public consultations with regard to those guidelines. So we're to see how this is going to come into play. It's supposed to come into operation on the 18th of March next year. Then we also had the Electronic Transactions Act, which is from 2006. It was amended in 2017. So this act is based on the UNCITRAL model laws. UNCITRAL is the United Nations Commission for International Trade Law, and from time they have different model laws under that. So this is based on the model law on e-commerce and model signatures. Basically what it's doing is it is harmonizing this legislation, which is the ETA, with the Electronic Communications Convention of the United Nations, in order to standardize e-commerce globally. And with that, it's bringing in a lot of legal certainty for e-commerce. It allows for the enforceability of contracts that you make with automated message systems where you don't have any human intervention. This act allows you to find some form of enforceability for something like that. It also facilitates paperless trade, also digital signatures using a public key crypto system and hash functions. So all of this comes to play under the ETA as amended under the Amendment Act of 2017. Then you have the Computer Crimes Act, which is of 2007. Now this act also very unique. It provides for identifying computer crimes, and it stipulates the procedure to investigate and to basically enforce against such crimes. It criminalizes unauthorized access into a computer system and using that to modify data, delete data, basically change, alter, deny access to data, and cause harm, unauthorized copying of data, unauthorized usage of data. And this act allows us to prosecute such crimes whether or not there was access authority, okay, which
Yeah.
gives it's a broad spectrum
Yeah.
applicability in terms of that act. There's also this panel of experts who are able to help with the investigations which are provided under this act. A very recent, unique, recent as in 2015, 1st of September 2015, Sri Lanka became the first South Asian country and the first Asian country after Japan to enforce the Budapest Cybercrime Convention. Now, this is a very good development for Sri Lanka because under this, it provides the opportunity to cooperate with other countries in gaining access to evidence which is available in other countries' computer systems and networks, which you essentially can't do if you're functioning by yourself. Now, this is very useful, especially in situations where there is, let's say, some sort of child pedophilia ring that is circulating child pornography videos across countries, or and to which you have certain children and teenagers who fall and prey in Sri Lanka. So you want to have some sort of collaboration and you want cooperation to get access to all this information. You can do that now because we are a part of this Budapest Cybercrime Convention, which is a very important step actually for Sri Lanka, and a pioneering step, I would say, in our region. Additionally, if we're just going back to some of the older acts, we have the Intellectual Property Act, which came in 2003. It talks about software, it talks about industrial design, it caters to some aspects of technology, but the act still doesn't bring within its fold the ideas of artificial intelligence. Whether if you have invented something with AI assistance, how would you deal with a patent for that?
Yeah.
Or can something that has been created by an artificial intelligence system be given copyright protection? These are questions that the Act does not cater to yet. Who knows, in the near future, we could have some sort of amendments to deal with that. But this is something that is not just a problem for Sri Lanka, it's a global problem. Little by little, we have certain developments in this area coming from countries like the US. Just recently, the US FTC released some guidance on, that's a Free Trade Commission, released some guidance on AI-assisted inventions, that they are not categorically unpatentable. But if you can show there's a significant contribution by individuals or humans towards that invention, then it is most probably patentable. So, we need some guidance like that. We lack that. But still, this act is something that we need to keep in mind because it does deal with inventions after all. There's also the Payment Devices Fraud Act, which deals with basically the idea of using unauthorized counterfeit payment devices to for the purposes of fraud. And this is also important in a technological sense if you look at it. And lastly, just bringing to your attention the Cybersecurity Bill, which is it was released in December 2019, and there was some public consultations that have happened, and now there is a draft available. But as far as I know, it has not been presented in Parliament yet. But that's another thing to look out for. In the very near future, we will be able to see some updates on that as well. So that is, I think, just a very brief roundup of the technology laws that we have and the tasks that they aim to accomplish. Of course, if we spend time, we can talk so much about these laws, but that's a very brief overview for you of the legal landscape pertaining to technology in Sri Lanka.
So, Thanuki, the next question is something that is really close to everyone's hearts and all the people that are there is that this cyberbullying and harassment, online harassment. So, I am pretty sure the numbers are increasing day by day. There is no reduction. I'm pretty sure of that. But there are many lives that are impacted by these, harassments and cyberbullying. So, what measures can be taken to address these issues effectively, in your perspective?
Yeah. So very quickly, I mean, if you look at cyberbullying and harassment, you have like different types of these, which I don't think many people are aware of. They just think cyberbullying is, sharing some person's picture around or sending it viral or a video. That is not what cyberbullying or harassment is restricted to. There's so much that can be done. Whatever you've done on a physical level, let's say you normally bully someone physically, you normally harass someone physically, um, I think that the cyberspace makes it that much worse because your ability to reach people has blown up by proportions when it comes to using the cyberspace. And you can have this in terms of you're lying about someone, you're trying to destroy someone's reputation, you're using the internet to do that. Social media has helped us to increase the 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 magnitude with which we do this. Hurtful, threatening messages, fake accounts, impersonations. Now you can add deepfakes into that mix, because now with deepfakes, the thing that we are worried about, which is, let's say, revenge, does it require that you've had intercourse with a person for them to create this video? All they need is a bunch of pictures or something to take your likeliness,
Yeah.
take your image, and just in a couple of let's say 30 seconds to a minute, they can create something, revenge porn and cyberbullying in that sense. There's also catfishing. Catfishing is where you present yourself as someone you are not on the internet. Again, deepfakes are not just limited to video, it's also images, it's also text, it's also audio. You can alter yourself to present yourself as someone completely different in a foolproof manner on the internet. And also, this helps to scam people very much. Harassment and cyberbullying come together with scams where you ask for money, that's extortion, but there's cyber extortion. Okay, all of this gets facilitated on the internet. So that's just to create a picture of where we stand in terms of,
Yeah.
okay, cyberbullying and harassment online. So I think how to address this is, first and foremost, we need to have laws, regulations, policies in place. That's the simplest thing that we can think of, because if there are no laws to address this, then there's no point talking about it, because where do we provide the protection, right? So
Yeah.
that's important. So even if there is no specific law, I would think having certain policies and standards are important. So that's one. The next thing is encouraging transparency and choice. These platforms must, um, and I think most platforms are trying to do that, but they're falling short, obviously. The Meta example I gave you about behavioral advertising is a good example of that they're falling
Yeah.
short. But encouraging transparency and choice is also very important. Filtering mechanisms, blocking mechanisms need to be in place. Privacy by design is something that needs to be inculcated in companies, in schools. I mean, in schools, if they are using any online educational systems, which we saw being used a lot during and post COVID, making sure that there is privacy in the design of these systems is very important. And when we're talking about youth, we're not talking about people just who are about 18, 19 years. Youth is what, between 18 and 29 years. I think so, about 29 to 30 years. So that's a lot of working people. So
Yeah.
if we're talking about companies, there needs to be a way to ensure privacy by design in these companies of their personal information. Um, but there's also this need to improve digital literacy amongst people, and also creating empathy across the board. And I mean, this needs to happen where we need to change society, and that starts by um, inculcating more empathy in the hearts of people towards others, and the need to respect other people. I think the biggest reason behind a lot of cyberbullying and harassment, or even minus the cyber part, just bullying and harassment in general, stems from the fact that people don't respect others enough. And this is something that needs to be taught from a very young age. And the more we do that, I think as time goes on, society will evolve to have people who are better able to be respectful of others. And this is an important change that we need to inculcate. Um, I think also privacy settings are things that need to be taught to people, because I don't think many young people, or even old people for that, I think old people are much
Yeah.
worse than young people when it comes to clicking on things, subscribing to things, and just agreeing to terms and
Yeah.
conditions. While the world has evolved from the point where you don't read the fine print to now where you no longer can, as a company, put things in a fine print and be like, these people won't read it, so we can put in whatever we want in there, and we can get the things the way we want. The present condition is that has changed. So in that sense, I would think people need to be still educated over and over again to understand what you are signing up for, and also to have better control of your settings, right? I think they've changed this up, but if you remember, when Meta released the Threads app,
Yeah. Yeah.
at the beginning, it was said that if you delete your Instagram account, if you
Yeah.
delete your Threads account, your
The
Instagram account is
Instagram.
also going to be deleted. But nobody knew this when they were signing up. So the very brave souls, after they figured out this is what's going to happen, they said, I'm fine with that. I knew about this. Most people didn't know. Even I didn't know. For someone who reads a lot about what's happening in the world of tech, even I didn't know. I think now they've released a statement that they've turned that over. But still, there's a lot of connectivity between apps.
Yeah.
So I think people need to understand the repercussions of that. When you sign up for this and that and everything, what's happening with everything that I'm doing? What's happening with all my data? So inculcating this kind of mindset and culture where you are willing to be more diligent, willing to ask the questions why, what is it, what's happening here, how is it happening, is very, very important. And that starts at the school levels, but also extends all the way up to organizations, big organizations, and also even to your parents at home, your grandparents at home. Lots of grandparents on WhatsApp, they are eternally forwarding messages that they receive, but they don't know what they are forwarding. They don't know what they're entering information into. So I think before we address the bigger problems of being bullied online and being harassed online, I think we need to address the root causes of that, which comes down to very simple behaviors that we have got so accustomed to over the years. So that is something that I think we need to do, and maybe couple it up with a lot of awareness.
Yeah.
Which is why I think what you are doing here is very valuable. And we just need to have more people talk about.
I think you also mentioned about this, Thanuki, earlier about how the big companies uses this data. I think like you mentioned the recent incidents where the owners of Meta, TikTok, and especially OpenAI, who came up and they were questioned about the data usage. So,
Yep.
what's your perspective on these practices of these tech giants like Meta, OpenAI, especially TikTok, how, they train the algorithms and stuff in handling this users' data? And where are we as how Sri Lanka is prepared to deal with such, if you, for example, if you take, Pitme in Sri Lanka, the applications, how they are using our data, especially, and how the government websites taking over when we had the full crisis and all that. How does that come into play?
Yeah. So, big tech, yeah, the big tech companies, they have, since time immemorial, I would say, they've been collecting our data, and there's a lot of sharing this data between themselves and third
Third
parties.
parties.
The extent of this, I mean, we can't even fathom, because we don't know. This is not something we will ever understand. But there's a lot of data of ours out there that is being shared extensively. And that has a lot to do with the fact that if you look at the types of data that are collected. So before I go into what they're doing in terms of handling our data, I would say we need to look at the types of data that they collect. Just think about it. They collect your location, they collect certain sensitive information about you, your images, sometimes facial recognition related things about your face, your the way your eyebrows are placed, your crow's feet, your different facial features are visible in this. Your purchase history, how do you interact with notifications? Recently, there was a research report that was released which said that apparently Apple, I think Apple, basically when you disregard notifications, so when you get a whole bunch of
Yeah, yeah,
notifications, you tend to disregard them.
yeah.
They utilize that information pertaining to you disregarding a notification as an indication of you not liking said product or said whatever it is, um, and uses that to advertise to you or not advertise to you. So I'm not sure whether it was Apple or Meta, but it was definitely one of those tech giants. And this particular research company said this, that notifications can tell them so much about you. Just imagine the action of swiping something, saying that you don't like this. And you would think that this is something that only applies to dating apps where you swipe left or right. But no, this is just basic notifications that you are getting rid of. It also has access to your stored documents. It has access to your gallery. Okay, your phone. I'm not just talking about social media, right? I'm talking about everything else. If you have a smart device in your house, it is listening to you. It knows what you're doing. In fact, sometimes when you're talking, it'll listen to you, and then it'll recommend things for you on your phone, on your laptop, of something related to a conversation that you were having maybe with your husband. So these are things that there's so much data being collected. Sensor data, time, frequency, duration of certain activities that you do online, views, interactions with content, your IP address, special like unique identifiers. It has access to this. These are the kinds of data it is essentially collecting about you every single day, right? So now you can understand that while it may seem like this is a lot, you will also understand that these companies are collecting this to maintain certain services. So if they don't collect data about what you like and what you dislike, how do they provide advertising benefits to companies to advertise to you? Okay, that forms a bulk of their revenue ultimately at the end of the day. So you can say they're doing this to maintain their services, but of course, like anything else, there needs to be some sort of restriction. The issues are that there is sensitive data being collected, there is privacy violations, there is retention of data for longer than necessary, there is tracking, there is surveillance, there are interconnected apps, cookies, cache features. Recently, Google said that they've gotten rid of their cache feature, but there are cookies, right? That's following you wherever you go. And I think the question comes down to how do you say no to all of this? And that makes me understand that I, as a consumer, as a user, don't have that much power to say no to everything. And that's all that it is.
Yeah.
So it's either that or I just go completely off the internet and I don't use anything, which is also crazy because you can't do that nowadays. You need the internet, you need the cyberspace to live your life. I mean, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is up to you to decide, but it's a need, right? So how are these companies doing in terms of safeguarding our data? I would think that, I mean, they're not doing too great, because if they were doing something extraordinary, I would think that they wouldn't be paying all these hefty fines that they're paying, right? Because after the GDPR, the EU's General Data Protection Regulation came out, there have been significant fines on companies like Meta and TikTok. Just to name two of the most recent fines. I mean, if you remember, Meta was fined 1.2 billion to user data being insufficiently protected and being retained by Meta. And then TikTok was fined 345 million euros. This was for the platform improperly processing children's data. And then you have this Trento, Italy's privacy watchdog fined the northern city of Trento in Italy for breaking data protection rules in the way it used AI in street surveillance projects. Right? So, I mean, just CCTV cameras on the street and how they use that. So, I mean, I would think that if these companies were doing a good job of protecting our data, they wouldn't necessarily be paying these fines to begin with. And also, it's continuously happening. And sometimes I feel like the companies would rather pay the fine and continue on with their business as opposed to make significant changes to their business models, because so much of their revenue comes from doing these things that we don't like, but they need to function and to thrive. So that answers, I think, your question on concerns on data privacy and how the companies are dealing with it. But now going into how prepared Sri Lanka is to deal with this sort of thing. So I think that Sri Lanka is now, under the Personal Data Protection Act, we're geared to handle this. We're definitely geared to handle this. And like I said, it's a great piece of legislation which has thought of so many aspects of data protection. I think in terms of Sri Lanka, what we can expect is that companies are now expected to give a lot of value to these principles of data protection, like creating accountability, having transparency, ensuring confidentiality and integrity of this information. You have it recognizes the rights of data subjects to access their data, to ask about the retention of data, to have their data modified or erased, right? And these things being there in a piece of local legislation is very important, because in Sri Lanka we can't be like, oh, there's GDPR in the EU, we are going to follow that. That's not going to happen, because you need a law in your own country to deal with that situation, and we have that now. So I think, yes, when this act does come into operation next year, that is in March of 2025. We are yet to see how this is going to work out. But so far, I think that in terms of the provisions of the Act, it caters to ensuring data privacy of us Sri Lankans in a very positive way. And it provides some key responsibilities to companies to reconsider and revamp their systems if it isn't in place already, and just basically have privacy by design in terms of the data that they're collecting and handling. So yes, companies like PickMe, because you asked about PickMe, they will need to get on board. Dialogue. I think most people have issues with receiving a lot of unsolicited messages from companies like Dialogue. So, I mean, we are yet to see how that's going to work, but the parts pertaining to unsolicited messages are to come into operation much later on. So, we are yet to see how this act is going to safeguard our rights, but the infrastructure is in place. The legal infrastructure is in place to protect us. So now it's just a matter of implementation, and I think we can expect something good with that going forward.
Yeah, clocking out of time also. Before we wind up, I wanted to add this question of I'm pretty sure there are so many viewers who wanted to, get into this low side of technology, just like you. So where do they start? Like, how do they start? And, just give some inspiration to the youth of what do they want to do and, be like you.
Yeah, so I would think first and foremost, I just give it in 4 points. Firstly, I would say take a step back and think if this is something you would like to do, whether this is something you are passionate about and connected with. Because we have this issue that just because everyone else is doing it, we also want to do it. Don't be one of those people. I would say if you feel this is something that could make you happy and this is something that you are really passionate about, then yes, you have a great starting point. So first take a minute to reflect on that. I did it, okay, before anything else, because I was someone who is dedicated to law. But then when COVID happened, I it got me thinking of what if. And I took a number of months to arrive at this decision that this is what I wanted to pursue. So that's something I need to say. Always think where you stand and where you see yourself in a couple of years, and does this help you get there? So that's one. The next thing is, if you think, okay, this is what I want to do, you need to invest a lot of time in continuous learning. You need to, just even if it's free courses or anything else, just take them and keep learning. Because you can't talk about this, or you can't be recognized as someone who is doing something in tech law or anything for that matter if you don't know what it is about in the first place. So,
Yeah.
and tech is something that is constantly evolving, so you need to be at it. And if anyone who sees my LinkedIn, they will realize that I'm continuously learning about this, and that's something I would say to anybody that they should do. And you need to also, in addition to that, try and get some hands-on experience. See how you can intern with somebody, you can write for somebody, I don't know, figure out the area that you want to be in, because tech law is not just about you know talking about it. It can be in research for it, it can be you're training others, or in the education space. It can be different, it can take different varieties. It can be you're part of drafting committees for new technologies, I don't know, there can be so many options. So you need to figure out, I would like to do these things, and then you need to see how you can get some hands-on experience on things like that. And finally, I would think the last and the most important aspect of all is to network. Because even if it is not to get in touch with the big wigs in this field, networking is so important, just to find like-minded friends to share your ideas with and get some constructive criticism every now and then. Because what you think may be completely different in the way it is perceived by others, and you need to hear that, especially when you're trying to do something unique and different
Yeah.
in a fast-paced, evolving world. So this is what I would say, that as advice for anyone who wants to get into this field. I'm new in this too, and I'm constantly learning, so I'm no expert to tell you about this, but this is what has helped me come this small distance that I have, and so I think it will be helpful to you as well.
Amazing. This last question that I have is, I pretty much ask this in all the episodes I do. What is that one message you have for the youth of Sri Lanka and Sri Lanka as a nation? What is that one thing that you have to say?
Um, Technology is evolving. It's not going to stop. We won't be able to identify what it's going to do tomorrow or in the next couple of days. This also means that all of us are at risk for some sort of harm. Um, So, I would say this is not to create some sort of fear in the mindsets of people who are listening, but what I'm saying is, as youth, what we need to do is constantly be diligent, keep your eyes, your ears open, read. Read is what I'm saying. Read about everything so that you are aware as to what is going on in the world. That way, even if something that's a little bit weird comes your way, you may be equipped to deal with that. Or you will, even if you don't know how to deal with it, you'll know that you have to speak to someone and get some help with regard to it. So read and be aware and be diligent. This is my message to the youth of Sri Lanka.
Thank you so much, Tanuki, once again for accepting my invitation and coming in for Tech Talk 360. And just one last thing, if there's anyone who want to reach you out, you can just share your LinkedIn, I think.
Yeah, yeah, you
They can
can.
reach you out. Yeah,
I yes, maybe
yeah,
we can put it
yeah. We'll put it
on
down
the
in the, yeah,
yeah.
sure. Thank you again, Thanuki. Some inspirational insights on what how technology is in Sri Lanka and what are the low aspects of it. I hope all the viewers joined in will gain some insights and hope we inspired the youth as well. That is another episode of Tech Talk 360, unveiling one bite at a time.